Bill is a friend to many in this room, and he is also quite famously the father of our friend Christy Dabney, and he is a wonderful photographer. I've taken photography lessons from him. I highly recommend it. He's going to be part of these Garden Club of the Virginia symposiums and flower shows. Involves photography now. I'll show you an example of a award winner from a Hillside member. This is one that she won an award for, how it's displayed. So I want us to learn a little bit more about this, and so Bill's going to do that. Bill, thank you so much for being here.
So we had some technical issues. They were all good issues, though. It's always fun to troubleshoot stuff. So I spent some time here yesterday, and I can't use my it's not PowerPoint, it's Keynote, my Keynote slideshow. So this is a video, so I had to make sure I stop it so it doesn't keep on going. But you might like that, because then it would only be about maybe 9 minutes long. Thank you very much for having me. I won't tell you to close your eyes, but if you did close your eyes, you probably, because you're in a garden club, see flowers. And the rest of us just see them everywhere. And what interests me is how obsessed I am, how obsessed I am, and I think a lot of people are just taking pictures of flowers. We have these beautiful peonies that come out. They're the first ones that come out. They're kind of purplish colored. My wife Marianne tells me they're tree peonies. I don't think they are, but that, you don't argue with your wife. But they're huge and they're always beautiful, and I take pictures of them every year. They don't change. But it's just that attraction that flowers have to us. And I think the idea of your garden club getting involved in a competition is exciting, because I'm sure all of you certainly have, maybe you don't have all the apparatus around it, but you have a smartphone. This is an Android phone, but they work just as well as iPhones do, trust me. How many Android users do we have here? One. Aha, interesting, interesting. In the world, you're in the majority though, in the world. So there you are. So I'm not a good joke teller, and you're supposed to tell jokes when you start a presentation. And I'm not really good at quotes, but I did find this one, and we all know who Georgia Keefe is, and her beautiful paintings of flowers. These are calla lilies, right? Yeah, okay. She seemed to be obsessed with calla lilies, because I think she did a lot of calla lilies. But if you read the quote, I think that applies to everybody, really. We want to share what we're experiencing. And so if you're interested in doing a competition, then you want to share your best work. And it is, I will say, even though I teach people how to use their cameras and take more control of their cameras, that's my goal, I will say that anybody really can take some incredible pictures with a smartphone. And the smartphones today are, amazing. My instructions from Betty today were not to be technical. And so this is not a class. I'm not going to teach you about aperture and shutter speed and how you want to control those to make better pictures. What I am going to talk about is just some of the simple equipment that you can use that some of you already have. I think that, does everybody have a smartphone? I mean, how do you live without one, right? So, as I said earlier, the smartphones of today are just incredible. They do such a good job of taking pictures. And if you go beyond the app that you get by default with the iPhones, I'll speak of iPhones, there are lots of great apps for Android too, and I can share them with you. You're fine. But there are lots of other apps that let you almost simulate using a DSLR, which is a little more sophisticated camera, or a mirrorless camera. But if you really are serious about both flowers and photography, it's worthwhile investing in a nice camera. Now, investing in a nice camera can mean going to Sam's and buying one of the boxes. They're fine. Again, there is no bad camera in 2019, unless it's a used one that's moldy. You know what? And if you do buy a used camera, that's something to watch for. Mold in the lens. Mirrorless is the new thing. It's been around really now for about 11 years, but it's been around longer than that. But the smaller mirrorless cameras really are attractive to those of us who are old and don't want to carry heavy stuff anymore, because they don't have a mirror in them. A camera, when light comes in through the lens, it hits a mirror, reflects up, it's like a periscope. into another mirror, and that little thing that's at the top of the camera, and then that comes through the viewfinder and you see it. So that's an optical viewfinder because you're actually looking right through the lens. Well, mirrorless cameras just get rid of the mirror. It's all electronic. And the nice thing about that is as you're looking at the scene that you want to take a picture of and you make the changes in your aperture and shutter speed, if you choose to use manual or shutter priority or aperture priority, you see the changes. So you actually see the finished product before you take the picture, which is an advantage over mirrorless and Micro Four Thirds cameras. Compact cameras, Betty got a camera for Christmas and that's why she came to me, and it's a beautiful camera, but it's considered a compact camera. So you can't change the lenses. You know, usually what distinguishes a compact camera from a higher end camera is the fact that you can change lenses. And that's changing the lenses is fun because you can get really wide angle lenses or you can get telescopic lenses, so you can bring things in from way far away. Don't dismiss compact cameras because, for example, the one that, what was it? It was a Panasonic ZS20, I think, or ZS70. And it's not a terribly expensive camera, but it's a very nice camera. So if all you're interested in is kind of upping your game a little bit from a smartphone, there are incredible compact cameras. And you could spend a lot more than a couple $100s on them too. So obviously you need a camera of some sort. There we go. Other things that are handy to have, and that's what this presentation was supposed to be today, and that is to talk about these kinds of things. And then we have 3 stations back there if you choose to experiment, and you brought a camera or your smartphone, you can experiment with those different setups. A tripod is a must if you really want to make sure you get really sharp pictures, and especially if you drink a lot of coffee, because a tripod helps you to keep the camera steady. And then a holder for a smartphone. I don't want to mess up your friend's picture here. This is a little tiny tripod. I have a YouTube channel, and somehow a group of Chinese young people have found me and they send me stuff to review. So I've got tons of little tripods. They seem to really like little tripods. Now this is the best one I've gotten so far. But this holder lets you put a smartphone in it. And just having that and a little tiny tripod, which you can get for like $7, $10 or whatever, or on a regular tripod like these. This is a very lightweight, and it collapses to about this size, has a nice case, and it's about maybe $15. So there's not a lot. It's not a big investment to up your game with even your smartphone, and then to get a holder. And so I'm not a vlogger, but you can use it to vlog if you want to talk about your flowers. Go online. So having some kind of smartphone holder is good, and a reflector. Now this is I think it's a 5-in-1, but it's a collapsible reflector. So yeah, it is. You take it out, and so it's small. You can put that in your purse, and I've seen some of your purses, and I know it'll fit. And this can help you to reflect light from a window, or if you are taking photos in direct sunlight, you can put whatever it is you're taking a picture of, if you're able to move it, into a more shady area but reflect light into it. But you don't need this. It's fun to have, and besides, I'm a guy and I like stuff. But you can go to Michael's or AC Moore's and get foam core. Or you can get a towel from the kitchen that's all white. Anything that will reflect light will provide you with a reflector. And you can put aluminum foil over this, and it gives you a whole different effect. So it depends what you're looking to do. And then, of course, you can really up your game and invest in a flash. And a flash now you might say, well, I've got a little flash on my iPhone. No, don't even. Our granddaughters, I don't know what it is that they want me to take a picture of them with their phone because they want the picture right away. And they insist on having the light on. Worst thing you can do in most situations, because it just gives you a flat look in the face. You want shadows, and the way you get shadows is to have the light coming in from the side. And so by having a flash off the camera, you're able to create the same effect that you get as I look at you, you're dark on this side and a little bright on that side because there's not as much light over here as there is over there. And that's what you want. And if you use a flash on a camera, you don't get that. But they don't listen to me. I mean, their mother is our daughter, right? Or LED lights. The thing that's getting popular now amongst lots of professional photographers are LED lights. So I have one here, and there's some back there. This is a tiny little LED light, and it produces some serious light. I think I can increase it, yeah. So I can make it brighter and brighter and brighter. And just having this on here and angling it a little bit will give you a different effect. And so what I'm doing is attaching a smartphone to a smartphone holder on a mini tripod. Again, actually this one I bought, I think. And adding a light. Now, if you're interviewing somebody, say you're getting ready for garden day and you're doing some of your own promo work, there's a space in the top where you can put a microphone. Or you could have a lav, as I have here. Because I'm recording what's happening right now, because that's another thing I'm interested in is video. I thought, well, why shouldn't I video myself? So we'll see how that works. Yes?
Where do you get that?
I'm sorry?
Where do you get those lights?
Where do you get those lights? Where do you get everything these days? Amazon. I mean, I do buy things at the local camera store. Unfortunately, the cameras that I use, Olympus and Panasonic, they don't sell. But no, this is I mean, I'll be glad to make a list and to give you a link to where they are, but these are easily accessible. If you just look up LED light on Google, you'll see lots of choices and lots of sizes. I have one back at the table. We're going to have this one as kind of a fill light to fill in some of the shadows, and the other one is mainly a main light so that you can see how these LED lights can work together. And it's a little bit bigger. And of course you can get huge ones too. And they run, I mean this was I think $50 because it's a very good brand name, but you can get them for much less than that. So when you are taking photos of flowers as you're preparing for your entry into the competition, you want to be cognizant of when you're taking it and where you're taking it. Now, in many cases, you don't have a choice about the where. The flowers are planted right there, and they're not going to move, and you're not going to move them. But if you can move them, always think in terms of that you can move to the left a little bit, and you can move to the right a little bit, and the poles are gone, or the wires are gone. Yeah, have you ever done that? You take a picture, and there's a wire going right across the top, or the pole's coming out of somebody's head. Well, always when you look in the frame, through the viewfinder, or even on your screen, look, before you push the button, look, examine all corners of the frame and say, oh, there's a pole. And so you just move a little bit to the left, choo, pole's gone. And midday sun is bright. This is not midday sun, this is a golden hour. A golden hour is an hour after sunrise and an hour before sunset, approximately. And you get this yellowish hue over everything. So there's just lighting things. If you don't have the ability to get light from a window, as we have in the back here, or when you're outside, or even if it's bright sun, you can take really nice pictures. If you take pictures in the 12 o'clock sun overhead, burning down, you're going to get harsh shadows, and you're going to get shadows below the flowers. It's just not going to be attractive. So you could add a light, like one of these little LED lights, underneath the flowers to fill in the shadows so you don't have that harshness. And underexpose a little bit. Again, that's why it's nice to have a camera that lets you change the exposure. Even though it's a smartphone, you can use an app like Pro Camera. That's my go-to app on iOS. Pro Camera lets you change the exposure. Now, on the default app in iPhone, you can tap on the screen and you get that little box with I think it's a sun on it. If you move your finger up and down, you can darken the screen or lighten the screen. So you do have control even in the default app on iOS. But using a foam core under the flower will help to improve that shot and underexpose the shot, which seems counterintuitive. But so this building, was probably before the sun was going down. And this is what the building normally looks like in the midday. Okay? It's an old building in my sister-in-law, where my sister-in-law grew up in Germany. And this is to talk about what's the purpose. Are you just taking pictures? So we've been part of the Garden Day experience, and you all have invaded our house, and we enjoy it. We did. I didn't enjoy the months before it. But you know what you taught my wife then is always have some kind of event in the spring, and then Bill will get out in the yard and work. So thank you very much for that. But I know you go to great lengths to create incredible arrangements of flowers that fit, or rather work, in a special location in the house. Your planning for that just blew my mind, and the execution of it was even more exciting. And I know, so what you want to do is go around and take pictures of those things. You sometimes have a photographer who does that, but maybe you like to do it yourself, or your own arrangements, whether they're on a garden day event or some other time. And that's where something like this, if you're going to use your smartphone, can be really handy. You're not just walking around and taking a picture and hoping it comes out, but you have a light that lets you maybe change and improve on the image you capture. So think about the composition based on what your purpose is for taking the picture. Sometimes, I have no purpose. I'm just obsessed with flowers. I'm not really obsessed with flowers. I'm obsessed with taking pictures of flowers for some reason. So anywhere I see, flowers make great foreground. This is an old fort in the upper right with the yellow flowers. And it just worked for me. I thought it was really, really cool. But adding flowers to your composition, to your pictures of people even, can really enhance them. So I've already kind of covered this, that the advantage of using other smartphone apps besides the default app on your Android or your iOS smartphone, or going to a DSLR or a mirrorless camera is, an advanced compact camera such as Betty's, is that you then can actually control the light, because controlling the light is what it's all about. As I said, this is not a technical presentation. I'm not going to go into all that stuff. I do teach classes. But if you're interested in getting more involved, you got a camera that's been sitting on the shelf and you just don't use it, or you use it, but it's always on the green auto. Megan, that's not the thing you do, is it, Megan? No. Megan was one of my star students years ago before she continued having babies, right? I only had one then. And then sometimes, this wasn't what I put this picture up here for, but obviously that's a bit of stylized magnolia blossom. That was on a walk going down Rivermont with my smartphone. I took that picture. Now the other thing about taking, not to be ashamed about taking pictures with your smartphone is you can blow them up. People make billboards out of pictures they've taken with smartphones. There are ways to enhance the picture so you can make it, to upsize it. But a lot of times just straight out of the smartphone, you can take a JPEG, and you always shoot the best quality you can. Don't try to save space on your smartphone. Take large JPEGs. JPEG is the designation for photos usually. But this was edited, obviously. So editing your pictures after the fact, you can change a little bit about how they look. And some might say that's a little bit overworked. I would say that, but I actually kind of like it. And who can't love a magnolia blossom anyway, right? So you want, as I said, you want to avoid direct sun, use a reflector if you can. And so these are tips, 10 tips. Backlight your flowers. That means if you have the option of placing your flowers or moving so that you can get the sun behind it. We all learned, at least those of us that are old, you always have the sun over your head, over your shoulder. Not true. You know what happens when the sun's coming over your shoulder? Your subjects all squint, or they just close their eyes. So you want the sun kind of at an angle coming in, like this, so it's not directly in their face. And so but there are occasions when you do want that sun, especially if it's low in the sky and it comes across the top of the flowers, just like with great portraits that you've seen. There are two things about a portrait that really draw your eye in, and that is the background's blurry, that's called depth of field, and there's kind of a light ring around the hair. It's not a ring, but it glows a little bit, and that's backlight. And you can do the same thing with flowers. So that's one tip. Avoid wind, or not. Sometimes you want to show the wind. You've got you were talking about daffodils earlier. You've got a field of daffodils, and you want to show them blowing in the wind. And so you use a slow shutter speed to get some movement. So there's a little bit of blur. So blur sometimes is good. But if you're trying to get a sharp picture, then avoid wind. And try to make it sharp by putting your camera on a tripod, by making sure you're using a fast enough shutter speed so you freeze it, and that you've got the exposure. I find that a little bit underexposed, especially if you're photographing greenery. You know, you shoot it, it looks beautiful, and you take a picture of this a massive green with some flowers in it perhaps, or just the green, and you look at the picture and say, ooh, that's not what I saw. It's because the sun is reflecting off the leaves, but our eyes trick us. Our eyes are pretty smart. Our cameras are dumb. And so you want to underexpose, and it makes it a little bit darker, a little bit richer. So those are the kind of things that if you experiment with, you'll really start to say, that makes a big difference. And probably one of two most important things is change your point of view. Now that can mean just get down a little bit. Instead of taking pictures of flowers like this, if they're on the ground in a garden, or if they're up on a mantle and you can't really do much about that except stand on a little bit of ladder, stand on a chair. But don't be afraid to get down on your stomach. Don't be afraid to get down on your rear end and get right up to the flower. And again, having a tripod can help you with that. But changing the point of view, don't always just take a flower straight on. And finally, get close. I looking at the flowers pictures that I found, probably half of them are close-ups. Now the technical term is macro, but you don't have, and people may tell you, well, you got to have a macro lens to do that. What the heck's a macro lens? Well, macro lens really enhances the results because it's made to let you get really close to something. But usually with your smartphone, you can get at least this close, and you can zoom in a little bit. You don't want to use zoom on your smartphones though, unless you really have to, because it doesn't give you, it can really degrade the image. But getting close changes the whole dynamics of the picture. This is a beautiful picture, a beautiful photo, a landscape. And we like it especially because of the color in the sky. I think that's what attracts me to the picture. But there's nothing like something really close, because that's a world of mysterious things inside flowers. And it is exciting to be able to show them. Now, that's referred to as the depth of field. Now, I'll show you a picture in a second that describes that a little bit more. Shoot through other flowers. Just like taking a photo of a person, and I indicated earlier, you want to focus on their eyes, and they're in sharp focus, but the background is totally blurred, and it draws your attention to them. But there might be some flowers or something on a table in front of them, and they're blurred too. And so it kind of gives depth to the whole photo. And that is appealing to people who are judging photos, trust me. But just having the other colors, especially if it's an array of color or different kinds of flowers, or at least flowers of the same kind, different colors, having a blurred color in one front with the main focus on the middle flower and then blurs in the back. Okay, so what we're going to do, if you're interested, I have 3 tables set up back here, and we're going to have there's an arrangement in the back, and thank you very much, ladies, who put together the arrangements. The arrangement in the back right by the window, just to practice taking pictures with just that window light helping. And I realize now I've got one with a flash, and the purpose of the flash is to show you that, have you ever seen a picture, especially of calla lilies or just white lilies, and a stark, dark black background? They just jump out at you. And so what I've got set up back here is kind of like a photo booth for flowers. It's already set up. It's my I've got my camera there. I've got a flash all set up. And you just have to snap the picture and look at the results. And you see all the light in that room back there. We're going to create a picture that has no light in it, except what came from the flash. And it will be dark. So that's one station. And the other station, I'm going to have this little LED light and a larger one back there, so you can see how, that's the one I'm thinking we probably should move up here someplace. You can see how that can help bring light to an otherwise dark room, for example, and that could be useful. So here is an example. Now I apologize for the deadness of these, what are they? Come on. Camellias, yeah. Whoops, that's the behind the scenes. So I just set them up close to the window, and they were really alive at one point, even though they're still buds. They just haven't matured. And Mary Ann couldn't believe that I was actually going to include the picture. So that's one thing, using window light. And this is turning an otherwise bright picture, a lit picture, because it's right by our front door, into one that has a completely black background. And that's the setup for that. It was right by, you can see there's lots of light there, but we got rid of it by using a flash. And 2 final thoughts. Get closer. When you think you're close enough, get closer. Get really closer. Come on, get really closer. It's like somebody you're going to put on your head. It's just a little tiny thing inside of a flower. Okay? And selective focus. So I focused on this point right here. That was pretty good how that worked, wasn't it? Yeah. And that's the depth of field. That means how much of it's actually in focus. Let me go back to that a second. So you can see very narrow, just like with the other close-ups that you've seen of pictures that I've had up here, I focused on one part, and depending on the aperture is how wide the lens opens up. The shutter speed, of course, is how fast it opens and closes. But aperture is the primary control that you use to create a very shallow or small depth of field compared to a landscape where you want to see the mountains in the background and you want to see the rocks before you. You've got your camera down low in the ground and you want to get the tree. You want everything in focus. That's a deep depth of field. And so that's something that in my class we practice a lot. And it's best when there are things actually growing in our yard. We walk around my yard, we take pictures, we walk around your yard. But this is probably the hardest thing, to get your head around what it is. I mean, although it seems obvious, and maybe you've gotten it, but how to create it, how to take advantage of it in your photos. Okay, so this is a lady that I met the only time I've ever gone to a photo conference in Chicago, and she was one of the people who were working in the conference, but she lives, I think, in the Chicago Botanical Gardens and takes incredible flower pictures. And I would say that 90% of her flowers are close-ups. But if you're interested, this is her Instagram handle. So take a look at Ann Belmont Photography and on Instagram, or just Google her. I'm sure that she has a website as well. But it's inspirational to look at some of the pictures she takes. And I do one-on-one tutoring sessions. I've got some brochures here if you're interested. And I was mentioning to Carol, because she was asking about it, if there'd be an interest of a group of you in this club or other clubs together to form a class, I'd be interested in doing that. So that's another way of approaching it. But these are little things I'm working on to post on Instagram and Facebook to help people. But I also give stuff away. So if you go to my YouTube channel, I have a series called Learning Photography. And it's everything I do in one-on-one sessions or in classes for the most part. So if you're not comfortable taking a class or being in a class with other people, the nice thing about one-on-one is, of course there are no dumb questions anytime, but sometimes you feel there are if you're with other people you know. But I've got a lot of information on there. And with that, let's do the hands-on. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions?
One question to ask you. What you refer to that Pro Camera app for your phone, would you recommend any other ones for any of us?
I promised you I would have a list. I don't have the list, but no, there are some other ones. But if you go to my website, I will have a link to recommended apps. How's that? Okay? See what happens
Bill,
here.
thank you for speaking to us, and I think you're going to have everybody go.
Yeah, anybody who's interested, I need to do some setup back there.
We're
Wait.
giving him a bee house.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Thank you. A bee house. There you go.